This is a Rook Endgame part 2. We already seen this type of condition previously. The only difference between the previous one and this one is this time the pawn is standing on a6 square, where in the previous one the pawn is standing on a7 square. In the previous one and in this one, both the cases, king is rightly placed on the g7 square. Now, the actual difference between previous one and this one, in a previous one we are continuously giving the check from the side. This time we cannot use this one because king can run away through the diagonal and king have a shelter on the a7 square, which in the previous move or the previous condition is not there. Let's see once what could happen if we keep on giving this side check. Do we get a time for maneuver from giving the check from the upwards? Let's see on the board. Let's start. It's white to play and king move good. King goes to the f1. Rook goes to the a1. Give check. And we start giving check from the sides. As we discussed, king have a shelter on a7 square. See, once king on the b6 square, which was in the previous move is a very important square, b6 and b7. Now we immediately go to the a1 square, try to cover up, try to save our rook, and also keep eye on the pawn on the a6 square. King immediately goes to the a7 square and we try to maneuver by going to the e8 square, but immediately white rook goes to the b8 and now we cannot do anything. We have to capture the rook and white will easily promote to a new queen. Before understanding that how black can deal with this position, let us understand the threats black have in this position. Black have a threats on the f6, b6 and the b5 position. Why on the b6 and b5? It's very obvious, because if white king manages to reach to the b6 or the b5, not only the rook but also king is the guarding pawn. King is also guarding the pawn. So in the very next move, if black doesn't able to give check to the white king, then from a8 white can took out its rook to the d8. One more thing, why the f6 is a threat for the black. Let's see how. Let's see, white king goes to the f1. Black king goes to the f7. White king goes to the e1. Black king goes to the f6. This time we don't need to worry that rook goes to the f8 and give us a check, because king to the g7, now both the rook and the pawn is under attack. So white have a no other option except going back to the a8 square. So we don't need to worry about the f. White king goes to the d1. Black king goes to the g7. King to c1. And now this is the time when we move our rook to the f2. This time pawn is not under attack. So if you think that pawn moves to the a7 square, then you are wrong. Let's see how. If pawn goes to the a7, rook immediately go to the a2 square. And do you remember, this is the same position that we are in the previous puzzle or the previous position. King goes to the b1, but rook to the a6 and everything is under control because the pawn is under attack and rook cannot go out of the a8 square. Let's say after moving up to the f2, there is a one more chances that rook goes to the d8. Then what? Let's see what we can do in this condition. Let's say rook goes to the d8. So rook is out of the a8 square. Then again we go to the a2. There is a chances that rook will give us a check from the d7 square. King goes to the f6. White will move its pawn to the a7. King will go to the e6. See, now we are trying to attack on the white rook. And this is a force move. White has to move its pawn because pawn is also under attack. And if he is trying to give the check, we'll go to the e7 square. So he moves its pawn to the a7. King goes to the e6. Rook is under attack. So now rook goes to the h7. Try to go away from the king. King to d6. We don't need to worry about anything and start moving towards the pawn, because after king to the b6, both rook and the king is attacking on the pawn. So rook goes to the h6, give one more check, king to c7, rook to h7, king to b6. See, we achieve the condition where both king and rook is attacking on the a7 pawn. So this technique will not work. So instead of doing all those things, when we move our rook to the f2, white will not move its pawn, not the rook. He will simply move its king to the b1. Rook to f1. See, now we start giving checks from the sides. King to c2, f2. See, we are keep on giving the check. But here is the position where the threat starts. Now king is under check. And instead of doing anything silly, if king goes to the e5, and if you think black can go to the f6, and it's a safe because white king cannot capture the rook, then you are wrong, because after that rook goes to the g8 and it's a check, and this time king cannot go away from this rook, otherwise the white will capture the black's rook, and if king try to go over here, he will again give you the check. So the only possible move from here is king captures the rook and white will capture the black's rook. So now do you think white will promote and black king can stop the pawn promotion? The answer is no. White can manage to promote the queen. So that is a threat number 1. We will not give a check when king is in this position. So if king goes to the d4, we will not give a check from the f4, because then king will go to the e5 and rook cannot go to the f6 square. So the only move is from here is rook to f6. We immediately go to the f6 square. If king try to come closer, then we go to the b6 and give attack on the pawn. Now from here, if you think that pawn goes to the a7 and will escape rook's attack, the answer is no, because rook to a6, and if you see it properly, this is the same position that we have discussed already in the previous video, and you know how to make it draw from here. So after rook to the b6, king tried to go nearby the rook, go to the d5, rook goes again go to the f6. Now do you think again pawn can go to the a7? The answer is no. Again rook to the a6 and we are into the same position. So king will go to the e4. See, we cannot give check. We can give the check from the e6. d5. Whenever king tries to come closer to the rook, rook immediately go to the b6. See, whenever king tried to come closer to the rook goes to the f6. d4, rook again go to the d6 and give check. Now this is also a small interesting position. If king try to attack back on the rook by the e5, we will go to the b6, and if king tries to attack on this c5, then rook will go to the f6. So by repeating those moves, black can manages to make a draw. King goes to the c4, doesn't matter, we go to the f6. We will not go here so that king can come to the b5 and try to protect the pawn. We always be in the position that whenever king goes to the b5 square, we must able to give check from this side. King goes to the d4. Rook again go and check from the d6. King comes to the e5, and remember we have go to the b6. So this again king try to come closer to the rook and we move away. In between there is a chances that white rook can also give us a check. Doesn't matter, we'll again go back. King try to come closer to the rook, we again go to the b6. So this is how the perfect way of make this game as a draw. White have a no other option than moving its pawn, and finally we are in the same position that we have discussed in the previous video, and you know how to make it draw from here.